Hello, everyone. This was a hard session to follow, I think, with all the energy that Scott brought. But I'm glad that I'm doing a double feature with him. Having just been the unicorn, now I'm a real person this time around. But welcome to my talk. And I'm very excited to talk to you all about a topic that's very close to my heart, which is the human side of data. And the reason why I'm so passionate about the human side of data is because I realized in my 12 years of working in data analytics that most of the failures and issues in data management are rooted in human factors, right? Like a lack of knowledge, a lack of collaboration, bad decision-making, all leading to finally data not working and things happening that are hard to recover from. So in this talk, I'm going to give you a little bit of a structured approach of how to focus on the human side of data with a little bit more intention and a little bit, hopefully, with some impulses that you can take away right away to focus on the human side of data more in your day-to-day. Quick thing about myself, I'm Tiankai. I currently work as a director for data and AI strategy at Thoughtworks, a consultancy focusing on data and tech solutions that are bespoke. I'm also the head of marketing of the German chapter of Dama International. I like to give talks about the human side of data, also about AI, like I give a TEDx Nuremberg talk about it recently. I channeled my energy for the human side of data into a book called Humanizing Data Strategy, which, by the way, is also sold at the bookstore right here out the door. So in case you're interested, you can have a look there as well. And I sometimes use my musical talents, actually now that you got a little bit spoiled before, for data topics as well. And personally, I'm born and raised in Germany, but my parents are from China. The reason why I'm telling you this last point, which is a little bit weird, right, in this professional environment, is because that I believe we're all shaped by our own unique experiences, how we show up not only in life, but also at work, right? For me, having been always the outsider when I was growing up, in Germany, looking like how I look like, right? But also having been to China, visiting my relatives, and then quickly realizing that I talk and behave differently, I always felt a little bit like the outsider, right? But instead of dwelling on this being like a big problem for me, I decided to channel it to something more positive, right? Meaning, I don't want anyone else in my surrounding to feel excluded, but rather included. And that's something that I think we need to do more in data, right? Because data is a space that's so easy to exclude others by making things sound complicated, by saying we need more skills and this and that, and no one else can touch the data, right? But in the end, it's really all about making everyone part of the journey, and that's really what matters. The last time, however, how I really felt excluded again was when I switched from the analytics side to the data governance side. And just a little bit of context, I was working in marketing analytics before, so I was great at stakeholder management. I really loved working with the marketing folks. I was invited to their team meetings and their town halls, and I was always eager to tell them about consumer insights. And then due to my passion for data quality, I switched to the data governance side. And I was shocked. All of a sudden, everyone I talked to before didn't talk to me anymore. Nobody accepted my calendar invites anymore. Nobody even reacted to my Teams messages. Suddenly it was just radio silence, right? And I realized that it really is full of bias to work in the field of data, right? Governance is a word that many people associate different things with. And when I was talking about governance, I meant value, data quality, and risk prevention. But other people would think about the data police, micromanagement, or roadblocks, right? And all that leads to the conclusion that we actually need data collaboration to be able to minimize the risk, but maximize the value to finally actually make it work. And when we think about collaboration, we need to also think about what it means to work together, right? And as someone who has actually worked at Adidas for 6 years, I'm allowed to use a sports analogy for this, which is that data actually is a team sport, right? And when we think about a team sport, everyone has different roles to play when they are in data, right? So we can look at it from a lifecycle point of view, where you have the data producers, the people that create original new records for the first time. You have data processors that are moving things from A to B while making them transformed in a different way. And you have, of course, data consumers that are actually using the data as well. And this is not mutually exclusive, right? You can produce data, you can transform data, but also use the data in the very end. But along it all, you also have data enablers, right? Those people that are actually making sure that everyone gets to the right environment to actually use the data. And you also have data translators, those that actually know how to translate data into insights, then into actual decision-making to make the right decisions. And all of that, those people need to work together. Even if people don't acknowledge that they are having one of those hats on, so to say, they are still doing it in a way, right? And if we acknowledge this with more intention, then we can actually address it in the right way. And just like in any sports, you can also play it in an offensive or a defensive way, right? Defensive in this sense means really to minimize the risks and avoid the risks. And offense means to actually maximize the value, right? So when we think about defense, it could be about regulatory risk, it could be about data privacy and security, but it could also be about brand reputation. For example, greenwashing and trying to make sure that the sustainability data you have actually is proving that you are sustainable in a certain way. But also then when you look at the offensive side, you have fact-based decision-making, right? To make sure that you're not only following the gut feeling. You have higher profitability, of course, by increasing the revenue and reducing the costs. And then finally also driving innovation, if you do it right, by using data-driven insights actually to do it. And in this analogy, if we look at what the role of data strategy and data governance actually is, then data strategy would actually be the coaches because they ensure that all players have a clear roles and contributions, and they play all in the same direction with the right processes and tools. And data governance in this case would be the referees, right? They ensure that they are rules, they ensure that people stick to the rules and that everyone plays fair and that everyone is ethically doing the right thing and how they manage data. And all of this comes together in how to actually make a data strategy more human-centric. And this is where I want to introduce you to this framework of the 5 C's. And the 5 C's really are basically a mirror of what are already human traits and human needs that we all have. It's just about using them more intentionally in our day-to-day at work as well. And the 5 C's are competence, collaboration, communication, creativity, and conscience. Competence, right? It's really about the knowledge across business, data, and technologies, and addressing the intrinsic motivation of people, of human connection and actually growing and learning more. Collaboration is about inter and cross-functional collaboration and making sure that everyone has transparency, accountability, and shared goals to work on to drive co-creation. Communication is really about audience-specific narratives to ensure that there's undeniable business value and personal reward communicated through continuous impulses. Creativity is really, for me, the human basis for organizational innovation, because innovation always starts with good ideas, and good ideas always starts with a human being actually driving the idea, right? And last, we have conscience, which is, of course, critical judgment and the moral compass that we all have, and applying that also in the work in our day-to-day. On the next few things, I will just show you a little bit of examples to each of the C's, so it's a little bit more tangible, and hopefully it gives you some impulses how to do it in your day-to-day as well. So let's start with competence. So in competence, we have invested a lot into the topic of data literacy over the recent years, right? So we wanted to make sure everyone has a basic understanding of how data works, so we can actually bring data to everyone and democratize it, as we called it in the past, right? But what's funny is that over the recent years, it looks like that data professionals are increasingly using it more to find an excuse not to work with the business people anymore, right? An example is an analyst creates a dashboard, sends it over to business stakeholder. The stakeholder doesn't use it. So the analyst says they're not literate enough, so I shouldn't even build a dashboard for them. It's their fault, right? And in a way, it's funny because it's almost like they are not speaking my language. Let me wait until they learn my language, and then I will finally be able to speak to them. But if you're part of the same organization, that doesn't really make sense, right? You should have some kind of common ground and shared goals to actually work together and not have these unrealistic expectations about the other side making an effort and not making an effort yourself. So finding the bridge to actually work together means that not only that the business people need to learn more about data, it's about data people also learning more about the business, right? And finding that common ground and building the bridge of collaboration together. And that could look a little like, for example, that when we think about domains, that when we look at the aspects of literacy, you would have the conceptual framework, of course, which is how generically data works. But when it comes to collection, management, evaluation, or application of data, to have a domain-specific lens to it. It also means that we cannot actually completely outsource the data literacy efforts or the upskilling efforts overall to anyone else, because we need to actually have the organizational specific people learning and teaching others about how it works. Because all a third party can do is give you some generic guidance on how it works, but the actual institutional knowledge is all within the brains of the people that work there, right? So in the end, upskilling needs to be of effort that people invest into with their internal resources and not only through external resources. Then let's talk about collaboration. And let's address the tension field we always have between a central service team and the decentralized self-service capabilities, right? Because back in the data warehouse days, of course, you had that central service team, right? And now in different architectures and different concepts, we have more about decentralized self-services. But there's always a reason to complain about it, right? It can always be the central team is not fast enough, they're not doing it thorough enough. And if it's decentralized self-service, the capabilities are not good enough, I'm not getting tailored enough capabilities. And what ends up happening is everyone creates their workarounds and their shadow organizations to do it anyway, but differently, and nothing is really being helped, right? And of course, there's not a one-size-fits-all approach how to actually make it work for all organizations. But I think it actually starts with the right mindset. And the mindset should switch from a transactional mindset to a co-creational mindset. Because in a way, the word service implies transactions, right? Service means I give you something, you give me some counter value back, and then the transaction is done. But if we think about co-creation and creating something together, it's more about having clear goals, right? And shared purpose together of what we're trying to achieve together. We are each contributing separately with our own ways to the same goal together with our own expertise and skill sets. And we are officially committed to it by basically formalizing it in our own 90-day plans, OKRs, whatever you have to actually do it. And once you have the right mindset of co-creation, then it doesn't really matter if you're more central or more decentral or somewhere in between. At least you all want to achieve the same thing. And it's not my goals against your goals anymore, but how we can achieve the same goals. And one part of collaboration also is really how to talk about the value of data, right? And over recent years, a lot of frameworks and methods have been created to actually make business cases about the value of data, right? And that's all good. You make it valuable, you make it clear that on a business level, it actually makes sense to do certain things. And that's what C-level and other decision makers care about, right? But in a way, that's only addressing the rational side of people, right? I don't know about yourself, right? But for me, I wouldn't every day get out of bed very excited to drive a very far away big business metric that's an organizational level. I would be more excited about certain projects, certain colleagues, certain things that I'm doing in my day-to-day that actually get excited by. So we need to shift from not only talking about the business value of it all, but also about the personal reward that's specific to the people that we talk to. For example, that means that if we talk about higher profitability as a business impact, then in between we have the higher productivity as the common ground. But for a few specific groups of people, it might mean that they don't have to clean data anymore twice per week for 4 hours, for example, right? It's very specific to them. Or let's talk about a new revenue channel, right? Which is of course great. Then we have the technological innovation on top of it. But for a few certain people, they really want to experiment and try out new things. So they are experiencing the joy of experimentation, which actually is what driving them to actually try out new things. And then we also have the legal risks being avoided, of course. Great that someone doesn't have to pay a fine or someone is not going to jail, right? But what really matters is the positive societal impact. And then finally, you also have there the moral contribution, right? Of having made either the world a better place or at least not having made the world a worse place than before. And that also matters, right? So then let's talk about creativity, right? I mentioned before that is like the human basis for organizational innovation, right? And it's funny because when I talk about that specific C, this is where I get the most feedback from data professionals that they don't think they are creative, and that's the reason why they chose to work in data, right? I chose an analytical job because I'm not a creative person. But creativity is something that's in all of us, right? Creativity is like a muscle that we just need to use in our day-to-day in the right way, right? We all have ideas, we all come up with new things. Why not just do it more at work and when we work with data, right? And as Picasso once said, the enemy of creativity is common sense. And that's why I think it feels so awkward for data people to be creative, right? And try out something new. And basically, it's just something where you don't know how the audience will react. You don't have any benchmark or baseline, right? You just kind of throw a creativity out there for people to judge. And I get it. But at the same time, right, what is the worst that can happen? If you don't offend anyone or if you don't destroy anything with your creativity, then it might not resonate, but then you just try and iterate again and again until it finally resonates and you actually created something new that's valuable and you brought an idea to life, right? And to actually get there, we need to create the right environment to actually make it become a habit, right? So first, we need to start with the right mindset. That means allowing ourselves to be creative. That means, for example, to right now look in our day-to-day and find the things that we are not so happy with and just brainstorm how we can solve it and make it better, right? And at least giving ourselves that chance to do it. Then we practice it by putting that theoretical idea in our heads into actual actions, and we give it a try, and we need actually the right environment to do so too, to be able to experiment, right? And finally, if that turns out to be valuable, then we created a habit, right? Something where creativity is the new default, and we all have new ideas proactively, but we don't have to be pushed towards it, but we actually think about new ideas in the right way. And lastly, let's talk about conscience, right? And when we think about everything that's going wrong and could be going wrong in terms of data, I tried to give it here like a very high level grouping of what those 4 areas are, which are data privacy concerns, data security concerns, data ethics concerns, and ungoverned AI, right? Data privacy concerns, of course, about personal data, and we're doing every day more and more with it. And so together in the interplay with AI, of course, there's a lot more dangers happening there. Data security concerns, similarly with other sensitive data like R&D data or financial data that shouldn't go into the public or shouldn't be leaked to the right people. That's also important to look at. Then data ethics concerns, right, where it's really about avoiding and preventing disadvantages to specific groups of people, because unfortunately not everything we as human beings did in the past was good. And now we learn from it, but we should then also exclude it or make an exception about what we do with historical data and what are the right patterns to learn from. And of course, that leads to ungoverned AI, right? It's models being trained with fair data and being transparent and explainable of what data goes in and what data comes out of it again, and what we do with it in the right way. But the thing is that data people are not experts in all of these areas, right? They are not legal experts, they're not DEI experts, they might not be ethics experts either, but those people do exist in the organizations, right? So it's really about bringing the people together with the data folks to actually make the right decisions together. So basically it means to have more cross-functional collaboration to really apply the expertise and the critical thinking that we all have and the moral compass finally to make the right decisions. And in the end, I always say, right, with the moral compass, we need the right environment and we need the right people together to actually apply it. We all have it in us, but we cannot really always express it in the right way. So why not bring the right people together to then do it? And this way we can move from being only reactively compliant to regulations to being proactively ethical and actually do the right things by default and by design. So we are not surprised anymore by new regulations, and we actually already have anticipated what we need to do to actually be right in the right way. All right, so in closing, technology should support and not replace humanity. Right? Working in data is not only exciting, but it does come with responsibility. And while data should be taken seriously, we still should have fun while working with it. The future of data lies in all of our human hands, and good luck to all of you. Before we go into Q&A though, I want to close with some music. Remember my story at the beginning, right, where it was about data governance and how I wasn't able to really break the ice. I did finally break the ice through some music. And it actually was a funny thing because it raised enough attention for me to talk to C-level leaders and to other decision makers in the organization to at least be opening up to understand what data governance even is. And nowadays, it helps other people that I'm hearing about to give data governance trainings or data governance leaders to talk to their stakeholders about it. And may it inspire you to actually find your own creative ways to communicate about topics that people don't seem to understand really well, right? So please enjoy Governors of Data.
Yo, did you ever wonder what data governance is all about? Well, listen up. DATA, letters that we live by. In a world that's essential, we chose the data life. Enterprise-wide, the data flows left and right. We are the ones who keep it all in our sight. Rules, policies, principles, guidelines. Nothing more sexy, but better than the stop signs. Walking the segue between business and tech. 1 foot in each world, all data in check. Data quality, data quality. No day goes by without this terminology. We know end to end how data works best. We set up the rules and the business got the rest. Governance of data, defect terminators. Good data comes first, and the rest will follow later. We know what is right, so let's make the data flow. We're role models of excellence. Let's govern it, let's go. Still Still not clear what data governance means. Here are some analogies to make you understand. Data is the force, then we're the Jedi Council. Using it well, that's one of our main goals. If data was a country in a world full of humans, we'd be in the embassy working on solutions. We're running marathons where the data flows, governing holistically in every column, every row. We're not the police, but we are data Sherpas. Without help, there's no hurdle that you can't pass. We might be nerds, but just the good kind. We can do great things even more than these rhymes. Governance of data, governance of data, terminate. Good data comes first, and the rest will follow later. We know what is right, so let's make the data flow. Your role models of excellence. Let's go. You made it clear this is the third verse. Are you ready for some governance buzzwords? People, process, projects, and tools. Automation starts with business rules. Data models, solution designs. A data catalog helps us to simplify. Master reference and metadata. Overviews are good, but governance is greater. System updates and new integrations. We'll design solutions with 10 innovations. Governance is cool, you got that right. In the name of data, hands up and high five. Governance of data. Governance of data. Terminate. Good data comes first, and the rest will follow later. We know what is right, so let's make the data flow. We're role models of excellence. Let's cover it, let's go. Governance of data. Terminate. Good data comes first, and the rest will follow later. We know what is right, so let's make the data flow. We're role models of excellence. Let's cover it, let's go.
All right. Thank you very much. I think we've got some time for questions, if there are any.
Thank you, Tiankai, for the session. Just one question here. As you are the author of Humanizing Data Strategy and AI Strategy, how can we expand this data strategy to cover also the AI use cases or to be AI strategy? How can we shift from this to this?
Right. I think, at this point, everyone knows how the data and AI go hand in hand, right? So you need the right data foundation, or at least the right contextual data to actually make AI applications great and work, right? And I think what's in the new world, of course, important part is how you define AI readiness of data, right? And that means the right contextual information through semantics, but it also means in the way of granularity and historical data, in the way how it, in ethical concerns, also is fair data and not putting certain disadvantages on certain people. All of these need to be considered. I think there's really not like one clear answer about this yet. I think a lot of different people are figuring it out because the AI use cases are also increasingly diverse nowadays. But there's definitely a strong link there and something worth exploring more.
I like the point about how there's often the fear of legislation, fines, but you can see the positive side with helping society.
Yes.
But not every company or organisation has got an obvious way they can help society. So any tips about how to bring that positivity into the organisation?
That's a great point. I think the main reason why there is this tension field is because often commercial goals are against the good for society goals, right? Like typical thing is if you sell more and you need to send out more packages and you need to produce more products, that's not good for the environment, right? So you have a sustainability challenge. So where do you find the balance between actually selling better versus being better for the earth, so to say, right? But the positivity has to come from there, right? Where if we're consciously making a trade-off and we are now sacrificing a little bit the commercial things to actually make the world a better place, then this is a conscious choice that needs to go through the whole organization to do it, right? But again, right, this is a big cultural and leadership topic, how this is even possible to be maintained. But yeah, there's always ways to make it positive, right? You just need to make sure that no one else is strongly negatively perceiving it, and then you still need to actually deal with the conversation afterwards. All right, then we're good. Thank you very much for your time.